Hey guys, just a quick note. I wanted to mention how obsessed I am with Care Skincare's Micellar Water Wipes. Now, these wipes are amazing because they're literally my only skincare product I take with me to the hospital or to work. Basically, they come in a 2-pack where it's like one of them is for the daytime in the morning, one of them is for the evening, and it's really nice because they both leave your face feeling completely refreshed. I can't tell you how many times I've used them before like a meeting or before seeing an important client or seeing a patient or, just situations where you want your face to look its best and refreshed and as if you just washed it. So go to www.careskincare.com, check out their amazing line of products. Ricardo and Pilar are some of the most amazing people, and I had the honor of interviewing them a few weeks back. So if you're interested, check out that episode as well. But again, www.careskincare.com. Check it out and stay tuned. Thanks. Hi guys, welcome back to Skincare Anarchy. This is Ekta, and I have a wonderful guest today. I've really missed doing editorial interviews, so I'm very excited to have her on and excited that she had the time for this. So without further ado, I want to introduce you guys to Alyssa Hardy, who is a former senior editor and journalist for InStyle magazine, and she is now working on a few projects of her own. So welcome to the show, Alyssa. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you for having me.
It's truly my honor. I'm so excited to talk to you. I really have missed talking to editors and journalists. So I'm really excited for us to have a little conversation about, obviously your career is where I want to start, and then anything related to beauty. So can you get us started by maybe talking about your journalism, just the whole career journey in journalism and what really got you into fashion and the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of had like a non-conventional way into media, but I actually started in beauty because my first job out of college was at a beauty textbook company called Milady, which is pretty much what all the cosmetology schools use.
Right.
And yeah, so I was an editorial assistant there while I was waiting tables. And during the day, I was working, 30 hours a week as editing books and working with authors that were typically hairdressers and makeup artists.
Oh,
and
wow.
so, yeah. And so I got the opportunity to work on pretty much there's like a big book that's like the full curriculum for the year for cosmetology school. And it's called Standard Cos. And the author for the year that I was working there was a hairstylist named Ted Gibson.
Yeah.
And Ted was really, really heavily involved. And he saw how much I liked fashion and how, my passion was really clothing and style. And he asked me, he's like, yes, this is a beauty book, but we do need someone to style it. Because of course these are a lot of portraits, but when we do the final shots, we need the models to be wearing earrings and cool collars and all of this stuff. So I think that you should style it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so that was a really big opportunity for me because it is don't have it in front of me, but it's like a 600-page book. So it was a 2-month-long photo shoot.
Wow.
And just, he was very involved in high fashion things at the time. And he really introduced me to a lot of fashion things and kind of gave me a confidence that, even though I didn't have a traditional background in fashion media, I went to a state school and have an English degree, but that I actually could be involved if I wanted to.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah. No, yeah, he's amazing. And he really believed in me when I was really young and maybe probably didn't even really believe in myself. So I do owe a lot to him. But so then from there, I started pitching a lot of outlets that, I didn't really know anybody, but I was kind of cold pitching. And that's when I started writing for Teen Vogue. And eventually I was writing for their fashion vertical pretty much every day.
Yeah.
And I was writing fashion news for them.
Wow. So how
Yeah.
was that? Like, did you like choose like you wanted to know more about fashion, so you picked that route for journalism, or was it just something that you kind of fell into and you really enjoyed it?
No, I think I always really loved fashion. Like it was always my thing. Like I was always obsessed with designers and
Yeah.
watching runway shows and like, just consuming like before social media, all of that
Yeah.
stuff, like just consuming every, like, this is aging myself a little bit, but there was this thing called fashion TV and I used to watch it a lot and just
Yeah.
be so obsessed with like watching runway shows and like, you know, looking at all of the cool stylish girls, and I just always really connected with clothing in
That's
a
so
way.
cool.
And yeah, and I think I just like talked about it a lot.
Yeah, no, I
So,
mean,
yeah.
honestly though, because that's really why I ask you, because I feel like fashion and beauty go so hand in hand, because like I was very similar in the sense that like I was watching the runway shows before we even like, you know what I mean, like before, like you said,
Sure.
before social media was a thing, you know, and like
Yeah.
I felt like a dork. I'm like, I bet you nobody else watches this like other than like
Yeah,
a handful of people. So yeah, that's really
totally.
cool. Yeah.
I think like, and it's you say that because it's like my first fashion week fashion shows that I ever went to. I actually was reporting backstage with beauty reporters, and I didn't
Oh,
care that, like, I knew stuff about beauty because I worked on textbooks, but I didn't like have the same passion for it. But
yeah.
I was like, it was all in the same realm, and I really loved the artistry. Um, and just being backstage is like such a thrill. And when I was younger, just being able to go back there and like hear about the hairstyle and like why we picked this high pony and like why we're doing a winged eyeliner because it went with this look and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. I really loved it, and that's honestly how I started like reporting on fashion shows and stuff, just through
That's so
beauty.
cool. I love that. I
Yeah.
really love that. And I think that, like I'm not gonna lie, like when I think about especially like looking at magazines, I remember like being really young and looking at like, when everything was in print and like looking through the
Yeah.
magazines. I'm not gonna lie, like I got so much of my like own makeup inspo from like the fashion like centered like pieces. You know what I mean? It was like I would
Sure.
look at the clothing and I would be like, oh my gosh, like I love those colors. Like, I bet those would be cool eyeshadow colors. So I totally know what you mean in the sense that like, I think when you fall in love with fashion, it's just like that's a whole different, like
Yeah.
I get you. But I want to actually ask you a little bit about the journalism aspect for especially fashion, because I've
Yeah.
never really understood the differences, right? Like I'm not in this field, so like I don't understand how like what is the like the traditional like article that you would do about like a fashion article. Like what would you write about typically?
Like today.
Yeah, like
Well, I
these
think,
days, like what's like the norm?
yeah, I think, it's so funny because it depends. Like I will do a lot of reported pieces. Like, you know, writing about some, like, using data about TikTok, and I write a lot about ethics and sustainability. So I'm often looking at a lot of data around that sort of stuff and interviewing people, interviewing like psychologists and experts in, carbon emissions or whatever that story is about. So I am doing a lot of reported features in that way, but I also do a lot of like essays. I personally try to stay away from doing a ton of trend stuff because I did that a
Yeah.
lot in my early career, and you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I do think that we have gotten to a place where we rely on trends so heavily that it's just really about making more money and buying
Yeah.
more things now. I
Exactly.
think trends have become about just things. And so for me personally, I try to stay away from doing too much trend talk because I think
Yeah,
it contributes to a
that is such an
cycle.
excellent point though, honestly. Like I'm so glad you said that, because You're right. And I think like that applies so much, especially to like skincare, keeping it like on that point for just the
Yeah,
podcast reasons. Like, I think
sure.
the whole idea of trends, like it's really kind of seeping into the space as well. And I really hate saying that because it's like what you said. It's like, it's not about always making money. It shouldn't be, but that's
Yeah,
really what it comes down to. And it's like, always wonder because I've never looked at I'm not gonna lie, like I've never looked at editors or writers as the reasoning for it. I've always seen like you guys and your role as more of like you guys talk about the things that like are really actually cool. You know what I mean? And I look more towards influencers and I'm like, well,
sure.
these are the ones that are like propagating trends and you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like that kind of thing. So it's just
yeah,
like very, very interesting that point because I hate that skincare has become a trend rather than
yeah.
like an informed area.
Yeah. Well, you know
Yeah.
what's so funny you say, like I literally went to Sephora earlier today because I wanted a face mask. And I was looking through and I was in Midtown and
Yeah.
I walked in and there's like all these celebrity brands up front. So it's like I don't even know. It's like Selena Gomez and Addison Rae, and there's all these celebrity brands that I'm sure are great. But it was like, as a consumer that doesn't have a ton of knowledge in that space, I was like, oh, there's too many options. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Guys, so I want to take a really quick break and mention that this episode is sponsored by Boscia, and we are very grateful to them for this opportunity. And if you haven't heard of Boscia, they were actually a leader in clean beauty since before it was a cool thing to talk about on social media. And I'm talking like this is in 2002. So, just to give you a little bit of background, Boscia is a line that really empowers plants to do their jobs of formulating with ingredients that are rooted in nature to create this plant to bottle formula system. And this provides really gentle and effective results. Now, the best part is that because their products have always been vegan, cruelty-free, always had no chemical preservatives, no artificial fragrances, colorants, none of that bad stuff, their products can genuinely be used on some of the most sensitive skin. So whoever you are, regardless of your skin type, I think this is a brand that can really resonate with you, and I want you to genuinely go check them out. So Boscia.com, if you go to Boscia.com, they've been very kind and offered our listeners 20% off their first order. When you go to checkout, you can type in the letter W, Skincare Anarchy, all one word, at checkout, and you will get that 20% off your first order. I really hope you guys check out the line if you have not already, and, I mean it. Like, it's one of the best brands I've ever used, and it was there when I knew nothing about skincare. So, yeah, check them out. They've stayed tried and true to their vision, and, I really consider them something that, a line that is irreplaceable and incomparable in this market. So, again, Boscia.com, W Skincare Anarchy is the code for 20% off your first purchase. And now I will let you get back to this great episode. Thanks, guys.
The pick.
Well, also, like, how do you feel about this? And I don't know if you're comfortable commenting on it, but I really
Yeah,
want to know, like, from an editorial standpoint, like, all the brands that are coming out like that, like the celebrity
yeah,
inspired brands. Like, how do you feel about those?
yeah. I think as long as there is a purpose for it,
Yeah.
right? Like if it's I feel uncomfortable when something is just about making money. Because it's like if to just put more stuff into the world with the only purpose of like making some corporation a bunch of money, I don't love that. But
Yeah.
if there is a purpose to the brand, then I think that's great. I don't necessarily have the most educated opinions on it because I don't know the products very well, but it does seem like there's a lot. Like I didn't even realize
No,
how
I
many there were
know.
until I walked in and I was like, wow.
No, there's so many. Like I
Yeah.
genuinely like, and just to like comment on that, I agree because
Yeah.
like it really is about I feel like making money with that because I'm
Yeah.
not gonna lie, just because you're putting a celebrity's face on something doesn't mean that it's the most efficacious thing or it's the most like, bang for your buck kind of like product or
Mm,
it really does not mean that. And I hate that,
yeah.
celebrities just like are jumping on this boat of like, okay, well, skincare's a thing now, so let me just come out with a line. Like
Yeah.
with makeup, I used to understand that because I'm like, I'm not gonna lie, I really do want to know what JLo's like, favorite
Of course.
eye shadow is. You know what I mean?
Of course.
But I mean, but then again, like on the flip side, there are some really great ones, though. I'm not gonna lie. Like Victoria Beckham, I feel like is like amazing. Like I'm glad that she came out with her own line. And there's like certain ones where
Really.
I'm like picking and choosing which ones I like.
And
So
that's I think that's part of it too, right? Like I think there's room for certain things where it's like these people have their fans trust them, and there's
yeah,
value to that, right? Like they're saying like, trust me, this is something that works, and you hope that that's actually the truth, because they have millions of fans that are going to trust that that is what is working, and they're going to put their hard-earned money toward it. And so I think that JLo's skin looks amazing, so I would trust that.
yeah.
you know?
I know, but like it's like when I remember when like Kylie's skin came out, and you don't have to like comment on this because I know this is like your area, but like for me, I can
Yeah.
honestly tell you, like when Kylie's skin came out, I was literally looking at like the most annoyed face in the world. I was just like, are you serious? Like you're
Yes.
like first you told the world that your lips were naturally like that. Now you're telling
Right.
the world that your skin is like that. Like what do you think? Because she's got such a following of like younger
Huge.
audience, and that's what worries me is like
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem with people that are a little more mature in the industry coming out with these brands, because at least I know that their following is based off like just a different demographic, like it's a wider audience, you know what I mean, and like
Sure.
more I think educated. But I think especially for like the younger audiences and the younger celebrities, like they need to be a lot more mindful, because it's like you're doing something that it's going to be impacting very impressionable people, like young
Mm-hmm.
minds are like clay. The way you
Mm-hmm.
mold them, they're going to mold. So yeah, I don't know, I try to like tell people like don't go by that, because that doesn't tell
Yeah.
you anything about the brand, so
Sure. 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 Yeah.
yeah. So
It's
I want to actually ask you one question, though. I'm really
yeah.
curious because I love
Yeah.
that you have a fashion background, and for me, I'm curious like how does it work in the like backstage with like when people are doing makeup and like the artists are
Yeah.
doing the makeup and stuff with the clothing, like can you describe that whole process, because I've always been so naturally curious like
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Totally. I just, you mean like at a fashion show?
Yeah, like at like a
Yeah.
high profile fashion show, like how does that work with like the makeup end and you know,
Yeah.
creating
So
that?
usually what happens is the makeup artist, the leads, for hair and makeup and nails, and sometimes their skin too. It just depends on who's sponsoring the show.
Yeah.
Because usually it's like, it's a key artist from Bumble and Bumble, or a key artist from Makeup Forever, or whatever it is for that particular show. They go, they work with the designer. They kind of like develop the look um, before the show, of course.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then they sort of write it down, and there's all these tip sheets, which like, I don't know if obviously we haven't had Fashion Week for real since 2019 because of the pandemic, but there was like every show has like a tip sheet of, here's exactly how to get the look, and it's got all the products, and it's so when a beauty writer does write it up, they're linking the products, and whatever. If it's Moroccan
Oh,
oil, they're making sure that they link like, the slicked back pony was done with this Moroccan oil hairspray or whatever it is.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's all on a sheet. And I can remember, especially being younger, and like when backstage beauty reporting was a little bit different than it is now, where we would literally just write out the looks. I
Yeah.
would be walking around with like a stack of tip sheets. Because they're just like, you're getting one from the nail artist, you're getting one from the makeup artist, you're getting one
Yeah.
from the hairstylist. Yeah. And then usually, it's like the one key, and then all, tons of other hair and makeup people that are just doing the exact same look on all of the models. And then, yeah, like the key artist is kind of walking the journalist through the look
Yeah.
as they do it on one of the models.
That's really cool. I
And
didn't
it's
know
very
that. I didn't
chaotic.
know that they had that laid out already, because like I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie to you, like I'm truly like very like gullible,
Yeah.
and I like really believe like like the stories you'll hear. Like I mean, I love Pat, for example. Pat McGrath is like
Yeah.
like my dream guest for this show. But like
Yeah.
I love how when she tells stories, sometimes she's like, yeah, well, I had to like kind of come up with what I wanted to do. And I've
Yeah.
always like felt like that's what they end up doing. But then I didn't know
Yeah.
that it was so laid out and it was so organized, which makes more sense, obviously, you know.
Right. Of course. And then there's always like a little place with the products because it's usually a sponsored thing. It's
Yeah.
not it's not like random makeup artists are there.
Right.
But yeah, and then it's, with skincare, like I have been to shows where there is a skincare sponsor. I like can't think off the top of my head what kind, but like the models will go get facials or whatever, like masks done before they get their makeup on, and that's like the role of the skincare
That's pretty cool though. I
sponsor.
like
Yeah,
that. I like
yeah,
that.
for sure.
I want to ask you more about yourself though, because I want to
Yeah,
know more about you, and like, I know you're branching out into different things and you probably can't comment on them, but just, your experience in this industry, like, how's that been? And, really like where, like, what has that led you to, like your own personal journey, because
yeah,
I know that obviously every career has that, aspect where it's like you do it and then you're like, well, I want to do this now, so can you like,
yeah.
talk about that a little bit and tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think, I love fashion and I love writing about fashion and I love being around it. But something that kind of happened for me a few years ago was I started to really pay attention to the sort of not spoken about parts of fashion that are really bad. And that's like sweatshop labor
Mm,
and, you know, unsustainable practices throughout the industry. And I started to feel a little bit like we had this really glitzy and glamorous side that I loved and I felt so blessed to be a part of. Um, being at a fashion show, I just always had such like a thrill. Like it's something I dreamed about, growing up. And then
yeah.
you get to be there and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is my life. But then I started to see that, there's that side, this really opulent, beautiful side, and then this other side that we don't really talk about, which is that a lot of the ways that we make these clothes are happening because people are having their wages stolen or they're working in really terrible conditions.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, some of that glitz and glam kind of covers up the other side that we should be talking about, and we should be protecting these people because they are mostly women and they're why we have clothes. They're like the
No,
talented people making the clothes.
I love that you're mentioning that. That is really, really, and I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry. I
No,
just
no,
like,
no, no, please.
I love that because, I was talking to Robin Doyle, and that's really like genuinely Robin was saying the same thing about like
Mm,
skincare. She like
yeah,
left, like she was in PR and she loved PR, but she was like, Ekta, like I realized that the people that are like that we're sourcing ingredients from and like the places that are putting in the labor, like they don't make any money, and like they're
yeah,
not, like they're not supported by such a giant industry. And then she was like talking about how that's why she founded like beautyology.com, because she was like, I wanted to bring notice to this, and like it's
yeah,
very hand in hand with what you're saying with fashion. I think it's very interesting that this spans across like so much, you know what I mean, like fashion and beauty.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, it's any industry really. Like it's the entire farming industry. So that's our food. It's all sorts of manufacturing in general. But in fashion, it's particularly bad because I actually shouldn't say particularly bad. It's bad everywhere, but it's so huge because we make so much clothing in the world.
Yeah.
You have all these fast fashion brands that are making clothing constantly, and just like we were talking about with these trends, like there's some brands that are making new clothes once a week.
Yeah.
And the reasons they're able to do it and put it out for 10.99 for a pair of jeans is because someone's getting paid 2 cents to make them.
Wow.
And it's such a huge problem that is almost so big that I think a lot of people shy away from speaking about it because it's so big and doesn't feel like there's solutions that can happen when there really are.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the whole point of what I was saying there was that I started to really just want to focus on reporting about those things, these types of issues, and speaking to the women that it's impacting. And
Yeah.
so that's what my book is about. It's like trying to help tell these women's stories and
I
also to
can't
talk
wait
about my
to I can't
experience.
wait I can't wait to read that. That sounds amazing, genuinely, because I can honestly tell you, like, I know, from like my standpoint, obviously, like in rural India, it's very common for most people to have like my parents were like this. Like, you won't believe
Yeah,
it. Like my father had like he had one suit, like a pantsuit thing, and he
sure.
literally would tell me, he's like, I would get it elongated every year as I grew, because
Wow.
because that's how they do it. Like, you don't have money for clothes, you don't have money for anything. Rural India is not like, you know what I mean? Like, it's rural,
Yeah.
people don't have money to eat, and then you have all these, like, that's why when I look at our industries here, I mean, I'm
Hmm.
very much on board with what you're saying, because it's like, there's so much wasting of resources, and there's
Yes.
so much manipulation and stuff, that it's like, you really do ethically have to take a step back and at one point be like, what am I a part of, and
Yep.
what is happening, and why, and so I really
Yeah.
commend you. I love that you're really like bringing this up, because it's the conversation that I think everyone needs to have, especially like, not just fashion, not just like makeup. It's skincare is a huge space for it, and like you
Sure.
said, almost every industry. So I'm really glad, and I'm glad that you were talking about your book. Can you reveal what the book title is? If
Yeah, yeah, it's
Okay.
called Fashion Dystopia, which is pretty on the nose, but um, but it's exactly what we were just talking about. It's like it's talking to these women. I've spoken to so many women, especially in Los Angeles, because there are a lot of issues in the LA fashion district, and I've spoken to women in Indonesia. I've spoken to women in Bangladesh. I've spoken to women in just all like really all around the world that are working in this industry. A lot of them are activists as well. And then it also speaks about my own experience in fashion and how, the sort of things that I think we could be doing better, and the issues that I've seen that we've all of us working in fashion have contributed to, and how we've contributed to it, maybe sometimes not even realizing we were.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I really like that. And I really, I so many kudos to you for like really, kind of putting this out there and really kind of taking action in the right direction about it, because there's a lot of people that wouldn't do that. You know what I mean? There's a lot of
Yeah.
us that we will sit there and we'll look at something, and, it's like Gandhi said, like, if you're a part of it, if you're just watching and you're a bystander, it's the same thing as
Yeah.
just, what I mean, as doing the crime. So I mean, I think that's a beautiful thing, and I'm so excited that you're coming out with a book. And everyone listening, you better go and buy Alyssa's book when it's
Yeah.
available. But
Yeah.
I want to ask you though, like, was there like one moment in your career where it kind of like clicked and you were like, I can't do this anymore? Or was it more of like it led up to this?
I think it definitely led up to it. There was a
Yeah.
few things. I was doing some marketing for a coffee brand.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you know about coffee, but coffee is one of the earliest fair trade adopters, because coffee farms have a lot of labor issues.
Yeah.
And so I started to learn about fair trade through that, and then kind of was applying it to the things that I was speaking about regularly, and which obviously was fashion. And then I also had written a story one time about Topshop.
Yeah.
Um, and it was like a trend story, shopping story, like get the look, or I'm not even sure exactly what it was, but I did this story, and then I got a very nice, honestly, email from a student who had been doing like a research paper about fast fashion, and they pointed me to some sweatshop issues, and they kind of just raised the question very politely, saying like, hey, like I know you talk about this kind of stuff, but then I
Yeah.
also see your name on this article about trends coming from these brands. And I was like, oh, that's true. And that's true.
Yeah.
It's totally like, it's part of my job. It's something that's like very difficult to get around, but yeah, it was kind of like clicked for me with the contributions of people like me that write about trends and write about shopping, and it's the same thing in the beauty industry too, when
Yeah.
it comes to waste and that sort of stuff.
Well, and also it's like, I really hate the idea of like, with trends, sometimes I'm not even lying, Alyssa, I feel like people are paid to make trends. Like,
Yes, absolutely.
and it's like, I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, I'm not stupid. Like, we're consumers are not stupid. We know that, like, oh, it just so happens that this comes out, at this time. It's like, it's not,
Yeah.
and it's become so transparent that I wish people would just like forget it altogether. But of course, like as an editor and a journalist, like you have a
Yeah.
job, and you have to do your job, and you have to, you know, deliver on your timelines. And that's totally like, I don't hold journalists or editors really that much accountable as I do like
Sure.
the actual publications. You know what I mean? Like, it's like,
Yeah.
you guys, like, it has, that change needs to happen. And this is where, like, I'm not trying to rant, but this is where like
Yeah.
the whole inclusion and diversity aspect also comes in, a lot, because
Absolutely.
it's like, if you have like people at the table that should be there from the beginning, you're not going to have these issues later on. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like, yeah, so I think this is such a, like, it's such an in-depth topic, and I love that you're starting this conversation, because I mean, honestly, I don't know a lot about fashion, know a lot about fashion, sorry,
Yeah.
but it's really interesting that this is happening in that industry as well, and then obviously beauty, and it's across the board. So
Yeah.
um I want to actually ask you though, like, in terms of fashion, one thing I've never understood is like, how do you report about certain, like, for example, like, I know there's a lot of designers out there, and I know a lot of the stuff that you see at like runway shows, it's like just not practical. Like, you would never wear
Yeah.
that. So like, what
Yeah.
is, like, how do you report on those topics? Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I think so the thing to it's there are certain websites that certainly will talk about each individual fashion show. And sometimes, in the websites that I've worked for and the magazines that I've worked for, like there will be times where you're writing about an individual show, especially if you're getting an interview with a designer. Obviously not everything that goes on the runway makes it to market.
yeah,
And things change as well. Like they work with retailers and change it so that it's things that like customers will actually buy. So they're buying ready to wear. They're not, couture is literally one off. So those big, like amazing Valentino gowns that you're seeing, like those are not going to go into a store. Like it's not
yeah.
practical. I don't even really know
Does anyone
outside of
even
the red
buy
carpet.
those? Do they
There
even
are
buy stuff
people.
like that?
There's
Because I
certainly
just
very
look at
wealthy
them.
people that do.
I look at them and I'm like, this literally looks like, I mean, it's beautiful in terms of
Yeah.
art. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm
Of
not taking
course.
anything away from that. But like, I'm like, I wonder if they even sell that. Like,
Yeah.
anywhere, even if it's like a one piece. Like,
Yeah, so it's
you know.
so funny. There's these brands, they do have like these, very wealthy clients or uh, famous clients that will, come in and wear the couture dress to, I'm not even sure where they're wearing it, but
Right.
probably places that we don't see.
Right.
But yeah, there is somebody buying it. But to that, it's kind of what we were saying earlier. Like there's so many shows.
Yeah.
Um, and why? I think it's just about selling things.
Yeah. I mean, I
And
think
if
you're
there's no
definitely,
reason to have 5 shows a year.
no, there's absolutely no reason. Also, like, I think that takes away from the artistry of it, if you ask me.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
like,
Sometimes it does.
yeah, because it's like you're just doing things so often that it's like not cool or not interesting anymore. So, and I think I see that a lot. Like, I mean, that I feel like that statement is really like, again, it applies to everything: beauty, skincare,
Yeah.
fashion, technology, like everything. Like, if you
Yeah.
just, and I don't know, I wish I had like, a solution for like all this redundancy, but there's none. And I don't know why it's still being propagated. That's one of my biggest problems, with this industry, is that, like, unfortunately, like, for example, with skincare, I'll see like, okay, it's a serum or it's like a toner or something, and it's like the
Mm-hmm.
same product, dude, like as like 18 different companies made. And then you'll see, editors
Yeah.
that like they'll just write about it, and I'm like, why even, like, don't even do that, because the more you do that, the more it's like urging small businesses to start forming and making the same
Mm.
stuff. So I think that that's something that, like, for me, like, I really want to put that out there, because I think we all have an ethical responsibility, and I mean, we don't need to keep making the same stuff over and over again, like,
Yeah.
it's, yeah.
No, absolutely. And as we're saying, like as a consumer that doesn't actually know the difference between 3 different serums, it can be really confusing. And that's why you go to that trusted space, that trusted influencer, that editor, because you're like, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm going to buy what you tell me to.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. That's, and honestly, that's all I've always seen editors like that. And a part of me is just like kind of irritated because like I know a lot of editors have gone down the influencer path, and I'm just like, okay, I like a lot of them, but then sometimes I'm like, "Ah, don't do that, because you're above that kind of thing." But
Yeah.
that's just my opinion though. But I agree with you. I think that there's a lot of editing, for lack of a better term, that needs to happen with like, what's being put into magazines and what's being like really propagated and advertised, because like we just talked about, it's a lot of redundancy, and it's a lot of like, it's just stuff that's not really making anything better. And it's really coming back to the point that you were talking about in terms of sustainability, in terms of good practices. Like, we can't change that if we keep encouraging people to create lines or brands that are feeding the system. You know what I mean? Like this cycle, like
Yeah.
it's never going to end.
Yeah,
If you
totally.
like there's so many people I know that look at online, like they'll look at Instagram, or they'll look at these new brands, and they'll be like, oh, I want to be part of that, I want to make a lot of money, and they'll come out with like a seriously like exactly the same thing, and it's like,
Yeah.
gosh, that just needs to end.
Yeah, I think, and the beauty editors that I know are like incredible, and they have the most amazing taste, and I would trust them like with anything. Like, tell me what to
Yeah.
put on my skin, and I will do it. I think the reason a lot of people go the influencer route, especially from media, it's really hard in media, and it's the pay is not great, the hours are difficult, and I think a lot of people see an opportunity in the influencing way, that they can like do more and have better opportunities. And so I think that's why you see that happen a lot.
Yeah, and I can understand that. I mean, we all have to
Yeah.
make a living, and I
Right.
totally
Right.
get that. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, this has been awesome, Alyssa. You are so cool. I love that you're doing your own thing. I love that you're like such an advocate for something so morally and ethically, correct, and you point in the right direction. I think that there needs to be more of you in this world. We need more people like that, because
Yeah.
I think what the points that you brought up are things that are definitely just not talked about enough. And I'm super excited about your book. So
Thank you so much.
yeah, and everyone listening, I'm gonna keep you posted on when it comes out, and
Yes.
I can't wait to like read it and see all the brilliant things you wrote. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. Thank you
And
so much for having me. This was fun.
yeah, I had a great time. And everyone listening, please leave some comments, some feedback on the art, and definitely let us know when Alyssa's book comes out how you liked it. So thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you.